everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. Today I have a layout that I made for a punched out Thursday to Die For. And to create this layout, I used a sketch from Christy's Beautiful Life, 30 Days of Sketches, Day 19. And this sketch was created by Daisy Scraps. I usually follow sketches very closely. For this sketch, however, I kind of went my own way. The sketch looks like it has a mixed media background, and I started off with the intention of making a mixed media background combined with some pattern paper as well. I have the pink paper on the left that I tore down the center, and now I'm adding some yellow. I'm going to layer the yellow torn paper behind the pink torn paper. And I was going to make the right-hand side of the layout mixed media, but when I placed it on top of this blue paper with the white writing, I decided that I was not going to make a mixed media background. I just love this combination of colors. I'm using a collection by October Afternoon called Sidewalks. It's a very old collection, and I don't have a lot of either the pattern papers or the embellishments, so I have to supplement this layout with some papers from my stash. The blue pattern paper, I think, was from a kit club that I used to belong to a long time ago. It's no longer in existence. It was called the Storyteller Club, but I'm really not sure 100%. But I think that's where I got it from. And then the yellow paper was in my scrap envelope of yellow papers, and I thought that that color went really well with the colors in the pattern paper. And I only really use, I guess, the pink dotted pattern paper from the Sidewalk collection. And then to the left of my layout, you can see that there are a whole bunch of fussy cut flowers. Those are also from the October Afternoon collection. Now I have the papers layered together, and I was thinking that just in case I wanted to use some of the blue paper on the layout, I would cut what's hidden by the pink and yellow paper, and then I fit both of those pieces back together again. Once I was finished with the video, I went back the next day and I attached a piece of 12 by 12 inch paper to the back of the layout just to reinforce it, since I did put together two different pieces of paper to make the layout. I'm mounting my photo on some white cardstock, and I made a note of the date on some stickers that I made for scrapbooking. I can't tell you how many times I've had to peel a photo up from its mat to try to find the date on the back of the photo. So I created stickers that I could record the date on and then some other information about the layout, and those have come in very handy. I keep that label off to the side, and then once I'm all done with the layout, I put the label on the back of it, and then I have the date. I don't have to be peeling up any photos to get it. The only embellishment I had for this paper collection was a set of ephemera. I pulled out three things: the tickets that are all the way to the left, those green tickets. I don't end up using those on the layout. The label that I just placed on the layout at the bottom, and the spinner that's up in the upper right-hand corner with the arrow on it. This layout is going to be about playing a game, so I thought that that would be a good embellishment to use. I wanted to add some pattern paper around the edge of the photo, so I found some green paper that I thought went well with the green in the pattern papers, and so I used that to mat my photo, and then I matted it again using a very thin white mat. In the sketch, there was a line going down the left-hand side and then across the bottom of the layout on the left, and I thought that I could make a line of sorts by using some punches. I used those Martha Stewart punch around the page punches. I had this flower punch, and so I made an L shape, and I thought that I would put that in the corner of the layout. I don't end up leaving it there. It just didn't look quite right to me, but I do attach it down, and it is there for a little bit of time. While I had that yellow paper handy, I thought I would add some photo corners to my photo. This is the EK Success Scalloped Photo Corner Punch. So I punched out some photo corners, and now I'm using ATG adhesive to attach them down to the layout. I was thinking that I wanted to give my photo a little bit of dimension, so I used some chipboard, the part that you throw away once you're done using all the chipboard pieces. Sometimes I'll save that to pop things up on, and I have amassed quite a stack of it, so I thought I would start using some of that. So I cut a piece to size, attached it to the photo, and then I'm attaching the photo cluster down to the layout. This photo was taken a while ago. This photo was taken on Easter Sunday, and after we had dinner, my family, for some reason, decided to play Apples to Apples, which is a card game. It's just kind of a fun game. It's not a super competitive game. My family is not a super competitive bunch of people. We do like to have fun though, so we did enjoy ourselves playing Apples to Apples, and so I wanted to take a picture to remember it because it's not something that happens all the time in our family. These flower clusters were fussy cut from one of the pattern papers, and I really, really love these flowers. I'm sure that these flowers were the reason that I purchased this paper. I used about half a sheet of pattern paper. I cut out 3 larger clusters, and then whatever smaller flowers were on that part of the page, I cut those out as well. The cluster that's on the lower right-hand corner, that I attached directly to the page. The other 2 clusters I popped up on some foam. I first put some thick white cardstock behind both clusters. One I've already completed, and then the other one I'm going to do in a moment before adding foam to them. I've started to do this because I have found that sometimes when I pop things up on foam and it's just cardstock that I've popped up, they can sometimes sag when I put them in the scrapbook page protectors, and sometimes even before. So I try to make sure that if I'm popping something up that it's sturdy, and this is pretty sturdy cardstock. This is 120 pound. So I'm fussy cutting around the shapes, but I'm not cutting exactly. I just want to make sure that the white cardstock doesn't show from the front. Over to the left, you could see the punched corner. I do end up using it on the layout, but I'm going to use it in a very different way than I originally had it. So for the flower clusters, I'm using some foam to pop them up because when I use that leftover chipboard, I like to use that for large pieces since the chipboard's a little harder to work with when you're cutting it into smaller pieces, and the foam is very easy to work with. There were a couple of tiny flowers that were on the page, as I mentioned, so I cut out whichever ones there were, and I'm using those as accents to add around the flower clusters just to make them look a little bit more interesting. I'm going to add that spinner in the upper right-hand corner, but first I'm just putting some chipboard behind it to pop it up. The center part that would spin on a real spinner, it was black, and I like touches of black on my layouts, but there was absolutely nothing on this layout that was black. So what I did was I took the spinner and off camera, I just dabbed some white gesso on it. I could have made it a color, but I decided that I was just going to leave it white. I couldn't decide which color to use, and even though there's a lot of off-white on the layout, there is quite a bit of white as well. So I decided that I would make the spinner white, and you'll see that in a little bit. I add ATG adhesive to the back of the spinner, and you could see off to the right on the top of the layout, that is the die cut that represents the metal part of the spinner. I haven't put any gesso on it yet, but I'll get back to that in a little bit. Now I add the punched out L to the lower left-hand corner of the layout. And this is why I love the ATG adhesive, because I put it down and I decide a little bit later that I didn't like it and I didn't have to worry about it ruining the page. This is nice quality paper. I was able to lift it up rather easily. Sometimes the ATG adhesive will rip the paper when I lift something up. There are probably a lot of factors that contribute to whether or not the paper rips, and I'm guessing paper quality is one of them. But usually I can get things up off of a background with very little to no damage when I use the ATG adhesive. If I had used liquid glue, it would have been a different story. I would have had to leave it there. You could see in the upper right-hand corner, I once again added some thick cardstock to the back of the flower, and I put a few pieces of foam on the leaves. Most of that flower is resting on the spinner, so I don't have to add too much foam to it. So this is where I peel off that L shape. I knew I wanted something in that corner, but I hadn't decided what yet. So I added some flowers to the upper right-hand corner of the spinner. I remembered that I had this scroll corner punch, and I thought this might be a nice addition to the lower left-hand corner. I used two of the pattern papers that I had already used on the layout, the yellow one and the blue one that's on the right-hand side of the layout, and I layered them on top of each other, just slightly offsetting them so you could see the yellow behind the blue. Now I'm going to work on the title. The title is going to be Game Time. I cut the letters of the word game out 3 times. I cut them twice from some 120-pound white cardstock. That's that same cardstock that I used to back the flowers that I popped up on foam. And then I also punch it out of some red pattern paper, and I again got this red paper from my scrap envelopes. This was just the right color red, I thought. Then I slightly offset the red from the white letters just so that you would be able to see the white, and then that would help those letters contrast with the pink background. So I place that underneath the photo, and then I attach that down. There wasn't enough room to write game and time from that font, so I thought I would look through my letters to see what letters I had that would go nicely with this word game. When I'm using 2 different fonts, I prefer to have one more of a manuscript font and one more of a script font. It's not always possible, but that's my preference. And while I really like the font, I think these letters might be a little bit too fine. They're a little hard to read. I didn't realize it at the time, but when you hold the layout back, it's a little hard to read the word time. But I made that decision and I ended up gluing them down, so I am fine with it. I think that if you are close enough to see my scrapbook, you can see that it says Game Time. Earlier, I clipped off a little bit of that punched out border and I used it on the left-hand side of the layout. I liked it, I just didn't like the way I had it on the layout. And now I'm adding some enamel dots. I added a whole bunch of very tiny ones to the punched out border on the left-hand side. I used a whole bunch of different colors for that punched out strip. And then I was thinking that for the scroll punch on the bottom left corner, I wanted to bring a little bit of red to that area, so I used a red enamel dot to do that. And then I again used some very tiny enamel dots to add to the centers of all of those yellow flowers that are on the layout. I didn't include the footage of me adding a whole bunch of light pink enamel dots to the roses. Since roses don't have the same clear center that some flowers do, I just didn't like the way the enamel dots looked on them. But there is one flower that is in the cluster by the spinner that still has a pink enamel dot. I decided to just leave that there. That's one of those flowers that does have a clear center, and I think that the dot looks nice on there. I could have also included another one on the other flower that's similar in the upper right-hand corner, but I didn't do that. Now I'm adding a whole bunch of die cut leaves. I used the same pattern paper that I used around the photo, that green striped paper. I don't know the manufacturer of that paper, but it was the perfect color to go along with those fussy cut flowers. So I used some Altenew dies, and the set is called Just Leaves. And I misspoke on one of my recent videos. I thought that this was a Pink Fresh Studio die set, but it is Altenew. I don't know why I tend to pair those 2 brands in my head. So this time I left the packaging out so there would be no question that it was an Altenew die set. I like this die set because it has a lot of variety. There are larger clusters of leaves and smaller clusters, and they all go together. I tucked those die cut leaves into quite a few places on the layout, mainly into those flower clusters. I attached that die cut that I gessoed to the center of the spinner, and then I put an enamel dot on top of it. I did a little bit of journaling on that tag with the red border, and then I put that on the bottom of the layout. I added some pearls to the photo corners, and now I'm using some gel glue and I'm attaching all those die cut leaves down to the layout. The dot on the eye was so tiny, I lost it and there was no hope of me finding it, so I used a pearl to dot the eye, and that completes the layout. Here are some close-ups. I say it every time at this part of the video, but I truly mean it. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I really appreciate it, and I really hope that you enjoyed it. And I also wanted to say a special thank you for those of you who leave me those absolutely lovely comments. They really do brighten my day. Thank you so much. Please take a look in the description box for links to all the other ladies who follow along with this challenge. Their channels and their videos are just amazing. I hope to see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.